This morning, I want to start off with an apology. I want to apologize to every parent of a bar or bat mitzvah child. Because until one is a parent of a bar or bat mitzvah child, it's almost impossible to fathom the stress that you endure. So many to-do lists, putting all the lessons on the calendar, helping to work on the Devar Torah, remembering to buy the sun-kissed candies, making sure you don't forget to pick up that family member at the airport, all the while still taking care of the needs of your family. Being the parent of a bar or bat mitzvah can feel like a full-time job, so I see you. So yes, an apology, I get it now, and parents, you deserve all my praise. But I will say with confidence, the effort is worth it. Because now sitting on the other side, the Shabbat after our daughter's bat mitzvah, I have learned some crucial lessons of what it means for a teenager to grow up, and perhaps more importantly, what it means for a teenager and their family to grow up during one of the most devastating periods in the history of Southern California. This morning, I want to share a few pieces of what I've learned. As I mentioned in my blessing to my daughter last Shabbat, one wouldn't necessarily choose to have a bat mitzvah as significant parts of Los Angeles burned to the ground. And yet that within itself is the very first lesson we learned as a bat mitzvah family. You don't get to choose when you celebrate, and you don't get to choose when you mourn. A baby is born, and you rejoice. A loved one dies, you grieve. A bat mitzvah service is put on the calendar years in advance, and no one can predict what the future will hold. Whether on that date there will be a worldwide pandemic, whether someone that you love will turn ill and be unable to attend, or even if you'll know if your house is still standing. Days leading up to our daughter's bat mitzvah, we received hundreds of messages from you, congregants and friends that were unsure of whether they would have a home to return to, and many for whom their homes are no longer. But the messages read, "Rabbi, we hope and pray that you will still make room for your daughter's moment, for we choose to rejoice with you." Humanity has a remarkable way of witnessing joy while simultaneously the world feels like it is crashing down. At our daughter's bat mitzvah, we had at least 5 families present whose homes were completely gone. And I asked one of them, "I don't understand. How could you possibly be here?" And they answered with the biggest of hearts, "Here, this is exactly where I need to be." Which leads me to the second lesson. Synagogue within community, this is exactly where we need to be, because we translate bar bat mitzvah as child of the commandments. The translation conveys a sense of responsibility and understanding that you are now connected to a structure that has embraced our people for thousands of years. You are part of the mortar that allows this community to withstand the greatest of perils, and also allows this community to experience the greatest of joys, which means we show up for each other no matter what. I've been trying to wrap my head around the despair of those that have lost their homes, their belongings, their photographs, the preschool art projects of their children, the precious keepsakes of their loved ones, the ritual objects, the wedding albums, the homes that served as anchors and safe spaces and respites from a world that already feels big, that already feels looming and scary. And this has been my understanding this week. You see, in Jewish tradition, when someone dies, there's a period of time between the death of the person and the burial. And that period is called aninut. It can be translated as living in deep distress. The person experiencing aninut is called an onen, and they are not responsible for anything. They're not supposed to work or engage in particular Jewish rituals. They're basically exempt from all daily obligations so that they can focus on two things: so that they can prepare for the funeral, and so they can make space for their grief. But here's the difference between a normal practice, if you can call it normal, of aninut and what we're witnessing this week. For those who are mourning this week, their lives are forever changed. But as we have seen, there's no funeral and there's no burial to attend. For most who have lost their homes are still unable to return. Some of those areas are still evacuation sites, some are unsafe to return to. And so those normal steps of grieving that we're used to, that kind of process has been removed. And instead, this person, the onen, is still consumed in their limbo, not knowing which way to turn. And that means it changes our process, those who comfort the mourner, because we have to learn how to show up in a way that we've never shown up before. We don't have a funeral or a burial on our calendar to attend. We don't have a Shiva that begins after burial. And so instead, we have to show and tell those who have lost their homes, and in many ways, as I have been told over the last few days, lost parts of their identity. We will sit with you in this gray area, in this limbo of loss for however long it takes. We open our sanctuary to other synagogues who are unable to return to their own. We donate toys, as you can see outside, to children whose playrooms are burnt to a crisp. We make our sisterhood gift shop accessible to those who no longer have Shabbat candlesticks or Kiddush cups for holidays. We feed firefighters, we clothe those in need, we embrace those consumed in their grief. So becoming a bat mitzvah mom reminds you that responsibility comes in so many different ways. But the essence of community is seeing yourself as responsible to the mourner as they continue to remain in this confusing, bewildering, dark, and lonely state. The final lesson this morning that I want to share with you comes from our beloved congregant, Dr. Elisa Bromberg. Elisa and her husband Roy have been members of Sinai Temple for over 30 years. Their sons, Levi and Micah, attended Sinai Akiba Academy, and Elisa has been a prominent pediatrician in the Palisades for many years. As you can imagine, their home and her office, they're completely gone. Elisa told me that when she was a bat mitzvah, one of her most cherished gifts that was given to her was that of a dove necklace. And she loved her dove necklace because it was always a reminder to her that even through the despair of the world, one must always take hope that the world can be renewed. And so she told me that she had bought in return a dove necklace for my own daughter, because she was hoping that as a bat mitzvah, my daughter would understand that hope continues from one generation to the next. And through her tears, Elisa explained to me, obviously, the necklace probably melted within the fire, somewhere within the ashes of her home. But then she said, "Rabbi, I have to share with you a story." And she explained, for those who live in the Palisades, it's a well-known and common sight to hear and see wild green parrots fly through the bright blue skies. And she and her neighbors of the past few days have been bereft, yes, of course, mourning everything that they have lost, but also wondering, through these thick layers of smoke, is it possible that all of the parrots have died? and she really couldn't handle another loss in this series of loss. But then she said, on Monday morning, one neighbor looked up to the sky, and there they were, an entire flock of bright green parrots flying across a gray, ashen sky. And it was a symbol to the community in the Palisades, and certainly a symbol to her, for the woman who used to wear a dove around her neck, that there is room to hope again. Just like the dove that she wore as a bat mitzvah, just like the dove that Noah sends out from the ark as the floodwaters begin to recede, even for those who are consumed with the deepest of despair, we need to be willing to see hope fly across the sky and allow hope to re-root within our hearts. So no, I never really understood, even though I've been a rabbi here for many years and worked with many B'nai Mitzvah, I didn't understand precisely the meaning of being a parent of a bat mitzvah. Yes, the hours of preparation for the child and for the family, they're endless. But truthfully, if you go around this congregation and this sanctuary, we all understand the essence of what it means to be responsible to a community. Because what we know is that when you become a bar bat mitzvah, what you learn is that you learn how to say mazel tov through tears. You learn how to show up for those immersed in what it feels like an endless limbo of despair. Noah's dove returns to the ark holding an olive branch, an eternal reminder that we must never erase the possibility of hope. We hearken the words of Hatikva, Od lo avda tikvatenu, our hope is not yet lost. Even for those in our community in which it is so difficult to step outside of their sorrow, as a community, we promise and pledge to each and every one of them, we will hope for you. Through our prayers, through our deeds, through our love, through our faith, through the fires, through the peril, through the joys, through the tears of laughter and sorrow, we will hope together, and please God, we always will. Shabbat Shalom.